Today we're going to talk about hiring the right realtor. I'm on an appointment, and before I go out to the appointment, I have a feeling that there's something wrong with the title. I send it off and I say, can somebody look at this and tell me, do we need to probate half of this house? The lawyer says, yep, you need to probate half of the house. Another common mistake is people think that going and getting a power of attorney, that they can go ahead and sell people's real estate for them. That is not always the case. You need to have proper documentation to do that. One thing I can always tell you about real estate is it always comes back and it always goes up. And that's from 25 years of doing this. I personally buy real estate. There's no better time than when you have money to get in the game, just like investing. You need to spend money to make money. You get what you give. If you give crap, you get crap. Good renters don't want to live in nasty places, places that are damaged, places that are not in good shape. When people tell me they don't want to do any work, I tell them that's fine, but realize it's going to take longer to rent and the quality of tenant is not going to be as quality. Sometimes spending a little money gets a faster person in the house and gets a better quality. Hi everyone, welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Every week we talk about something to help you make a little money, maybe save a little money, or maybe just help you navigate this crazy world that we live in. Today we're going to talk about hiring the right realtor. Now you're probably like, Laura, you talk about this all the time. Of course you're the right realtor, Laura. That's what you're here for. That's what you're trying to tell us. No, that's not why I'm telling you this. I'm here with Freddy today and we're going to talk about things that I've come across in the last month that I'm like, what is going on here? And stop hiring your brother's, mother's, sister's, cousin's, uncle who needs money because they can sell real estate.
Never hire family.
So,
never.
I could tell you so many different things that have come across this week. I'm on an appointment, and before I go out to the appointment, I say to myself, I have a feeling that there's something wrong with the title. But I'm not a lawyer. I do not pretend to be one. But I send it off, and I say, can somebody look at this and tell me, do we need to probate half of this house? And the lawyer says, yep, you need to probate half of the house. Now, they bought the house back in 1994. The daughter bought the house with the mom. And of course, they took it tenants in common, which now means the daughter gets 50%. The mom's half now has to go probated, and there's another sister. So what happens to the other sister?
She has to put in for the probate.
She and the other sister, the one that owns the other half, have to put in for probate.
Yes.
So technically, if this other sister wanted to screw her sister, she could.
Or she could take a quarter, or she can debate it, no?
Well, the one sister only gets a quarter.
Right.
The other sister gets 75% of the house.
Right.
Well, what else could they have done? Because that's how the house was deeded, right? Or
Well,
put in.
Well, they could have, if people would ask more questions, right? Like, what is it that you're ultimately looking to do? But first of all, the daughter never, unless the daughter was on the mortgage, which she wasn't, they were doing it for the purpose of what most people think is to protect the house if they die. But that's not really how it works. So what would have been a great idea would have been let the mom buy the house and then put it in Ladybird Deed. So that way the mom still has full control of their house. Nobody else can, the kids can't take it from her. Because let's just say the mom wanted to sell the house and the daughter said, nope, I don't want you to move. Guess what? You're not selling your house. You see what I'm saying? You're giving people control of your life. So to me, what would have been the best thing would have been to put in a Ladybird Deed. Now, by the time I had met them and the mom was still alive, I said to them, let's go ahead and take care of the paperwork so that you won't have to go through probate. But by the time I met them, the mom was no longer able to function in the capacity that they could do this. Wow. Another common mistake is people think that going and getting a power of attorney, that they can go ahead and sell people's real estate for them. That is not always the case. You need to have proper documentation to do that. And it has to be approved most times by the underwriter. So you have to be very careful as an agent. If you're not sure what you're looking at, and I'm never sure, and I've been doing this 25 years, I still get it reviewed and tell a lawyer, take a look at this, make sure that this is correct, because the worst thing is to get down to the end, right? And now you can't sell the property. So if I had taken the listing on Saturday, put that on the market, get an offer, they do an inspection and appraisal, and then the title company comes back and says, hey, 50% of this house needs to be probated. Now the buyer has to want to wait. At this point, I can put the property on the market. The good thing is it's probably just a summary of administration, which is good, but I can put the property on the market, and then when the contract comes in, I can put on the contract subject to court approval.
That's crazy.
Which can usually be pretty quick. And while that's happening, the money can still go into an escrow account till we close.
That's what I was
After we
going to ask you.
close.
Can't you just put the money in escrow account until
But you
everything's
still need the
decided?
court to approve, because let's just say, for instance, you go and you undersell the house. Like, let's say somebody wants to sell it way under market value.
Just to get rid of it.
Right, just to get rid of it. That, the judge has to approve that. So you can't just do anything you want.
Interesting.
Now, when you hire an attorney to review documents like that, is it an extra fee to your client, or is it somehow bulked in? Because if I were buying the house, and all right, Laura, this is what I've agreed on, your commission is whatever, and you say, well, now I need to send it to an attorney. Who's covering those attorney fees?
Okay, so that's a great question, right? And it all depends on, if you get a new agent and they don't know who you're using, the attorney's going to charge you, for sure. Like, they get paid, and
Right.
their fee is going to be much higher if you've gone out looking for that attorney on your own, or a new agent that doesn't know anything, definitely going to be more. I have relationships with multiple attorneys throughout Broward and Palm Beach, and so I'll ask them as a courtesy, can you please look this over? And they do. So, like, for instance, I went out on an appointment and had one attorney look it over, but now it needed to go to an actual different attorney because they're going to do the summary of administration for the, technically it's the probate. And now this was $5,000 between the cost of the attorney, a little less than five, probably about $4,300, but that's $4,300 that didn't need to be spent if the right questions had been asked in advance. And an example of that is, had a gentleman selling his property. It was not his primary here. He lived in Connecticut. His primary was in Connecticut. The kids were helping to sell it. The kids then called me and said, our father has just been placed on a feeding tube. I said to the one son, I said, you need to get a Ladybird deed immediately. Because if your father passes, you're going to have to go through probate because this is not his primary. Now, even when you're in a trust, like there's still things that you have to follow. But again, these are like little things that could be taken care of in advance if you understand the right lingo and you know what to ask. So another example, now this is title, right? Another thing that happens a lot of times when people are buying homes. And I think if I just say to Freddy, I'm going to buy a 1968 house, what would you do?
I kind of like it.
You like it, but
I like old houses, but it's probably going to need work.
right. But one of the things that I found, I went on an appointment and the guy says, I need to sell this house. I said, okay. I go, but you've only been here for less than a year. He goes, yeah, but I need all new plumbing pipes. I can't afford it. I said, well, didn't you scope the pipes before you bought the house? And he says, no. I
He
said,
wants to flip it.
no, he didn't want to flip it. He was buying it he couldn't flip it. At that point, he'd already bought high end, like,
So why did he buy it?
Because he liked
to
it.
live in it. But he-
1968 house?
Yeah, but the thing is that he wasn't advised to scope the pipes.
Wow. Or the roof, or the windows, or the doors, or the floors.
Listen, a home inspector is going to do, now the home inspectors are getting better at offering more services now. I mean, listen, I could go back to my first property I ever bought. It was done on, remember, like 3 pieces of paper, the carbon copies. That was my home inspection report. He kept one, I took one, like,
I remember that.
yeah. Things have come a long way. But that's a whole nother thing, is that offering the right services. Like if you're buying, I'll sell a house on the water and I'll sit there and watch, and these agents won't even go ahead and inspect the seawall.
That's crazy. I bought an old house. My first house
Yeah.
was almost 90 years old.
Oh, that must have been in New York.
Yeah. And I checked everything. And I knew going in, I got to change everything. The piping, the furnace. But I didn't tell my wife at the time, because she never would have gone for the deal. But I found the ugliest house in the best neighborhood in the Bronx. And I flipped that house. That house cost me $120,000. I maybe put in 200,000. That house sold for $1 million.
Oh, wow. So we all know who's going to buy drinks this weekend.
Well, this is going back. Well, I don't
No,
have the
he
money
spent- he
anymore. She
spent it
has
already.
it. It's all gone. But I do understand if you buy right, if you buy old. But today the market has changed. No, everything has changed. You want to buy right going in.
Well, my favorite one is, right, is when people are married
Oh, boy.
and they go to buy a house, right? And then they think, well, I'm the only one on the mortgage, so just put me on the deed. And they think, well, if I get divorced from my wife or my husband, they're not on there, so I don't have to give them anything. Well, that's a misconception.
It is. Trust me, it is.
All right. So if you're not on the deed,
Uh-huh.
mortgage doesn't matter, right? It's the deed really that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You're married, right? You guys are married. Only your name is on the deed. You get divorced. Does he get part of the house when it sells?
Yeah,
Because it's
because your
Joint
marital
property.
assets.
Marital
Because you're
asset.
married.
Yeah.
But if you're in the 2025 and you're not married, living with somebody, you don't get half of anything.
That's your mistake, Freddy.
I'm not saying it's a mistake. I'm just saying the way things are now. Now, what about this?
Well, it's
quick
also it
claim?
depends upon state.
What, in Florida.
Now, yeah,
Let's stick with
and I
Florida.
only know Florida, so
What about a quick claim deed?
yeah, that's
say-
another thing that happens all
But
the
is that
time.
even valid?
So you got to be careful with those. People do them wrong all the time, and they mess up the title.
9 out of 10 times I heard they're wrong.
Yeah. So you also have to be careful about claiming things into trusts. So things have changed, but I will tell you, back in 1992, a lady had bought a townhouse in Coral Springs. In 2019, she asked me to sell it for her. Well, there was a mistake on the legal description. So when the legal description had the mistake, we went back to try to use her title policy. But in 1993, she claimed the property out of her name into her trust. Now, the way things worked back then is different than how they work today. So that ended up breaking the chain of title, and her title policy was no longer valid. Now, that was from back then. Now, today, that doesn't happen as much, but people don't understand, getting a title policy for yourself is optional, but not for the bank. So if you pay cash, you don't need a title policy. But if something is wrong, then you won't have protection. Now, people will say, oh, it's a brand new build. But you don't know that land could have had an issue. There's so many different things can go wrong that most people can never fathom. Some of my favorite deals have been the ones where they say to me, oh, there's nothing wrong on the title. And then fast forward, something's wrong.
Now, doesn't the title company have errors in admission? So if something goes wrong, they're supposed to cover it? They're on the hook for it?
I've never seen that ever utilized.
Do you
ever.
know, I'm going to tell you, it's scary talking to her. There was a house that I sold in New York, and they called me a year later. And they said that they found a $65,000 mistake. And that I had to raise the money to pay for the mistake on the closing. I said,
You
why
signed
me?
an affidavit.
They were the title company.
Doesn't matter. You signed an affidavit. So we'll go to commercial break. When we come back, I'll tell you about something like that
Wow.
happened during a mix-up from the title company on a short sale,
Okay.
and came back later, $13,000, and I was way pregnant at the time, and that was not fun.
Wow.
We'll go to a commercial. We'll be right back.
At JK Closing Attorneys, we do all of the same things that a title company does, but with the benefits of being a law office. We can help with residential real estate, short sales, commercial real estate, refinances, 1031 exchanges, and FRIPTA withholding.
Contact JK Closing Attorneys today at 954-332-3111. Again, that is 954-332-3111.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. So first of all, we're talking today about mistakes that happen and reasons why you need to make sure that whoever you're dealing with knows what the heck they're doing, right? That's first and foremost. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen a lot of mistakes. And, one of the things I'll say is if I ever have made a mistake, I'll own up to it. I will take care of it. But back in the day, we had tons of short sales. Now, funny, I met a man this morning and says to me, they're coming back in Fort Myers. So that'll be interesting to see. So go look for your good deals in Fort Myers. But so I'm doing a short sale back in 2008, and I'm pregnant with my second son. And back then, we picked the title company even if we had the buyer. So of course, the title company made a huge mistake, $13,000 mistake on the closing statement. It got figured out. I had no idea because it was hard when you had a first and a second and you're trying to balance and you're trying to, this person's short and this one's taking only 10%. Short sales were something else back then. So they come back and the title agent calls the buyer because you sign an affidavit and says to him, you owe $13,000. He's like, I don't owe anything. We're done. That's your problem. She goes, no, you signed an affidavit that if there's a problem in the closing, you'll come back and correct it. So at the time I'm pregnant and I'm already having like a lot of health issues and gained 100 pounds. And this stress, I literally was blind for it felt like an hour. It was probably about 30 seconds where I couldn't see. I was like, what is going, all that stress. But I'm in the elevator at the doctor and they're like, somebody needs to come up with $13,000. And I'm like, well, you picked the title company. I said, so? These are the crazy things that happen. So you are responsible to come back if, though, if your money's short when you're coming to closing. I think I think this guy knew that they didn't collect all the money needed.
I don't know. Sometimes when you get the documents at closing and the amount of money, if you're a first-time home buyer, it's staggering the numbers to see because here you are leveraging to get your first house, getting the down payment, and then all of these other numbers. I feel like you get blinded by the stress because you think, how could I possibly come up with this money? Where does this money go? And then you'll hear people in your ear, well, that's an extra fee. You don't need that. And that's an extra fee. And you've talked to Max about that a lot, that people do put extra fees in some of these costs, which is why Max is so great.
Right. Yeah, there's some fees that are standard. There's nothing you can do about it, like your doc stamps and what have you. But you'll see a lot of times people adding additional fees on, and those fees get junk fees, and they are negotiable. And again, a lot of times, a lot of people don't know how to read taxes.
Right.
So that's really important too on the closing statement so that you can, sometimes sellers can actually recoup some money back before the final closing by reading those closing statements correctly.
But again, I think that's come down to the realtor because you would know when this closing statement comes in, you would say, all right, let me talk to this one. Can we get rid of this? Can we negotiate that? As the buyer, you don't know what's negotiable. You have no idea. You're going full faith on what people tell you.
That is true. And, some of that money, so you have closing costs and you have prepaids. Prepaids are things that you're going to get back in the long run. Closing costs, goodbye.
They're gone, right?
But in the end, somebody asked me today a question, and I'm going to always stand by this. I look back at customers that I sold homes to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and I look at what they paid and I look at what they're worth today. And I sold people homes that they were upside down. They weren't selling them for nothing for any time soon. And now those homes are worth 3 times what they were before. So one thing I can always tell you about real estate is it always comes back and it always goes up. And that's from 25 years of doing this. I personally buy real estate, there's no better time than when you have money to get in the game, just like investing.
Patience seems to be the topic of today is having patience to watch the markets come back up.
You just got to stay earlier. You got to stay pat. The only thing is that a house is kind of strange because if you've outgrown the house or you found something better, you may still have to wait. What's the average wait on a house?
Well, the thing is that if you're at the 2 3/4 right now on your house, it kind of hurts to sell that, right?
Right.
So I mean, sometimes the recommendation on something like that is because that's like free money, right? Keep it, rent it, right? And then still go buy what you want.
I was going to ask you that on clients that want to rent their house to buy something else, you do that too? You rent the house for
Yeah,
them?
I do. I actually had somebody call me today. They said that their father had passed, a friend of theirs, and that they needed to sell the house. I get there and the lady's like, no, I don't need to sell it. I need to rent it. I'm like, okay, either way, we can help you with that. We do background credit, make sure everybody is definitely qualified, sometimes anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times the rent. All that depends. And I have rentals myself, so I turn down a lot of people. And I want to make sure that whoever I'm getting in there is going to be someone's going to be able to pay. You know, I get scared. Like people just move here from New York, they usually go back. If they've only been here for 3 months, it's like, you know, a lot of times they're like, nah, I don't like it here. I want to go home. And they try to break the lease. So I just had a guy call me. He said, he's like, oh, I want to sell now. The person broke the lease after 6 months. And we see a lot of that.
Is it worth redoing a home for a renter?
So yes and no.
Okay.
So it depends on what it looks like initially, right? But I have a friend of mine that her parents always say, thank you so much for getting her into this and helping her, like making her buy, because she's like, our daughter's so cheap, right? And I'm like, no. And so I say to her all the time, you need to spend money to make money. You get what you give. If you give crap, you get crap. Good people, good renters don't want to live in nasty places that are damaged, places that are not in good shape. So when people tell me they don't want to do any work, I tell them that's fine, but realize it's going to take longer to rent and the quality of tenant is not going to be as quality. So sometimes spending a little money gets a faster person in the house and gets a better quality.
You know, I'm thinking about 55 plus communities. Back in the day when my grandparents were 55 plus, you were retiring 60 years old. It was a different 55 than I think now we are at 55. So those communities, I think the renters now, they're younger, they may be more affluent, they're looking for different things.
Yes.
You
They
need
want more modern, more,
Right.
they're not willing to take what
it was then.
Like a 55 then and a 55 now, I mean, is totally different looking. You know, it's, and the world is also different from back then to now. You know, where now both the man and the woman is working. It's needed in order to live a comfortable life. There are still people that, you know, have wives that stay home and take care of. But we had a show last week, which was, you know, what's it like to be married to me? And I have to say, like, I wouldn't want a wife that stays home and doesn't. And I know some women are like, oh, well, you know. I don't know. I don't want to depend on anybody.
But you're very independent.
I'm very independent. And so, I mean, that's a personal decision, but, you know, I just, you know.
What did you get into real estate for?
What did I get into it? Honestly, I have a master's degree. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I fell into this.
For psychotherapists, real estate, are they the same?
Not really, but sort of.
Kind of, right? You have to go to the mindset.
I got to help people.
Maybe it is now, because things have gotten tough, but back in the day.
Oh, no. When I quit my job, I'm sure when they went to delete the computer, they said, what was this girl doing?
Really?
I wasn't looking at porn. I was actually doing real estate. It's real estate porn.
Real estate porn.
Yeah. Houses here, houses there.
It's interesting though, because my grandparents had a house that's now my mother, which is then going to be, I guess, Ladybird, it's me, whatever it is. It needs updating. I know it needs updating, and I haven't been in
That's
there
a fort.
in a long time. But it's an old 55 plus
It's a
community
brick
in
house.
Sunrise.
Where are they? Oh, they're in are they
Lauderdale West.
Lauderdale West, yeah. So the maintenance is getting high over there.
Maintenance
too.
is really
It's all
high.
brick. The floor's brick. Everything's brick. The walls are brick.
No, that's my parents' house, my grandmother's house in Lauderdale West.
I've never been there.
They had a renter. The renter he left. He's moving. So now it's, do we keep it and re-rent it?
Call Laura.
Do I move my parents into it, or do you sell it? So there's a lot of options on this house.
What are you going to do with the brick house? I love that brick house.
You want it?
Yeah, I love it.
Reminds me of that song.
I bring
That's about a
Laura
woman,
in
not a
there.
house,
Laura,
though.
this is a fort. It's like an old fort. It's beautiful.
So they're in plantation, huh?
Yeah.
And
The
it's
acreage.
sunken living room. It is unbelievable.
I would love to call Laura into all of these things.
I would.
But it's getting into my parent. Ultimately, it's their decision, right? So it's changing the mindset. But there's a covered patio porch with like the screen that they'd like to enclose. and bring it up to one level, pop out the walls, make it more modern, redo the kitchen. I'd like to bump out that wall and do a lot of things to it because 55 plus, that's me, that's you.
I got
That's not
somebody
you.
who could fix that for you.
So
got
things
a
like
guy.
that. That's why I'm asking, is it worth, and the rent on it is so cheap, it's crazy
You
cheap.
got to go see this.
Yeah, I think that's something that I would look at to say, okay, what are the rents in what condition and what are the rents in another condition? And I'm telling you, like, it totally matters what you give and what you get. Because I'll tell you that I had a client who has a property in Parkland, and I said to them, listen, you really need new appliances. They could have gotten $300 more rent a month, right, for one versus the other. It's $3,000 for new appliances. You can get a whole set for $3,000. Like 1 year would have made up for it, and those appliances aren't going to be bad in a year. And at least then, if that tenant moves again, you get another good tenant. People said, "Oh, these appliances are really run down," but some people just don't want to spend the money.
It's their mindset. It's still that, it's a
Yeah.
different 55 plus mindset. And I think that
This
that
is all
could be
ages,
us.
though, and like you want to.
And
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you,
totally.
that appliance thing, I didn't listen. My appliance went out, my fridge, $16,000.
Oh, you had a
fridge.
Sub-Zero.
16,000. I almost had a choke attack.
Well, I guess that went quick because there's so many things you could do wrong in this job, but
There's so many things you do right.
yeah.
Or
But
you
if you're
call
thinking-
somebody, do it right. They call you, they do it right.
That's right. Right? Anyway, thank you for always listening to Making Money with Laura Sanders. And until next week, we'll see you then.